So the situation is worsening. The pressure on the border is increasing.
Officers and police, border guards are constantly being attacked.
So we are dealing with twice as many attempts to cross the border illegally as last year.
Imagine that every day there are hundreds of illegal immigration attempts on the Polish-Belarusian border. The Polish-Belarusian border is currently one of the most dangerous borders in the entire European Union. This is a border that, if it were not tight, up to several hundred people would get through it every day. In 2023, nearly 355,300 people entered the EU illegally, which is the highest number since 2016, when there was an immigration crisis. Polish soldiers and police have to face attacks like this every day, where immigrants throw stones and objects they receive from the Belarusian authorities. There is one goal: to destabilize the border of Poland and the European Union, leading to social conflicts. This is what happened because a Polish soldier died after being stabbed by a migrant on the Polish-Belarusian border. This sad information was provided on June 6th by the Polish General Command of the Armed Forces. The uniformed officer had been fighting for his life since at least May 28th. The threat of hybrid attacks is growing every day, and Minsk, together with Moscow, seems to want, again as in 2021, to lead to mass attacks of illegal immigrants on Poland in order to destabilize the EU borders.
Attention, attention. The police inform. If you don't follow the orders, force may be used against you.
Already a month ago, former collaborators of Lukashenko's regime who joined the opposition reported that the dictator was planning to intensify attacks by foreigners on the Polish border. This was true information. The migration crisis on the Polish-Belarusian border began in 2021. At that time, almost 40,000 cases were recorded, attempts to cross the border illegally, which was a record result since the beginning of the tense situation. This led to a crisis in Germany caused by excessive migration to this country, which forced Berlin to restore border controls.
The situation is escalating, the pressure on the border is increasing, and according to the border guard data, we are dealing with twice the number of employees. Attempts to illegally cross the border from a year ago, which unfortunately has soldiers and officers as victims. Aggression is increasing. I have no doubts Minsk and Moscow 90%. These people have Russian visas, flew to Moscow, other Russian cities, and are brought to the border. They are instrumentally, cynically treated by Putin's regimes, about Lukashenko as an element of the attack on Poland.
Statistics from early 2024 may indicate that the crisis is intensifying, and this year may be much worse. Therefore, in today's material, we will check what is happening on the Poland-Belarus border, which is extremely important for the European Union. We will show you the latest migration routes to Europe and how the Polish government wants to counteract it, and what plan Russia might have. I invite you to watch. From January 1st to April 4th, the border guard recorded 4,831 attempts to illegally cross the border with Belarus, which is an average of approximately 50 per day. At the beginning of the year, the situation seemed to be under control, and these numbers did not make such an impression when viewed through the prism of the events of 2021. Everything changed at the turn of March and April when the data skyrocketed dramatically. From April 4th to May 21st, there were 10,507 attempts to get to Poland through Belarus. This means that in less than 7 weeks, there were more than twice as many attempts to get across the border than in the entire quarter of 2024. Only between June 3rd and 4th, 450 people tried to get through, according to the information provided by the border guard. In the middle of the night, immigrants can throw firecrackers and even lit objects at the Polish police stations. Additionally, they cut the fence using tools they received from Belarusians. Buses of people are to arrive from Minsk every day and be dropped off at the Polish border in order to further destabilize it. Such situations lead to more and more dangerous incidents, such as the death of one of the Polish soldiers who was stabbed by an immigrant. Urgent intervention and expansion of defense capabilities on the Polish border are needed. It is for this reason that the largest strengthening of the European Union border in history is planned through the implementation of a project called the East Shield. Activities undertaken under the Shield East program are aimed at, among other things, strengthening the capabilities of the Polish army, including strengthening detection, warning and tracking systems, preparing forward operating bases, preparing logistic nodes, and creating appropriate infrastructure for anti-drone systems. These are investments concerning both military units and airports, but also matters related to the Polish border. It is one of the largest NATO defense projects and the largest fortification to be built in the European Union after 1945. This is what the visualization looks like. In the first line, there will be the existing permanent barrier, then the already created road that is to be hardened. Next, there will be an integrated engineering barrier with 24-hour-a-day monitoring systems. A little further, there will be an anti-tank ditch. Reinforced concrete hedgehogs, that is the so-called dragon teeth that prevent heavy vehicles from passing through. Russia is creating the same right next to the front line with Ukraine, but also in Crimea. There will also be room for the planned minefield in the middle. Later, there will be pockets of resistance, watchtowers and trenches, and the whole thing will be surrounded by a green belt that will effectively allow the army and critical infrastructure to hide. There will also be additional reinforcements and ammunition warehouses up to 50 kilometers from the border. In turn, infrastructure such as bridges is to be prepared for potential blowing up if the enemy somehow forces through these reinforcements. The Polish-Belarusian and Polish-Russian borders will resemble the Korean DMZ. These are to be the most closely guarded borders in the European Union. This solution seems to be one reasonable direction in the face of the threats that constantly come towards Poland from both Russia and Belarus.
The strength of the Polish army, strength in alliances, social resilience, the Eastern Shield implements all these elements because each areas they cover and pillars they cover the conditions of our security. The Polish army will be involved, primarily involved with the general staff in June in planning, in taking action in the entire scenery and the entire schedule. The functioning of this challenge, the general staff will have an enormously important role. That is the military, the armed forces, and the equipment we will be acquiring, such as airspace monitoring. This is also the cooperation of various transformation and modernization programs.
The migration crisis may continue to grow, which is why the project is to be put to a vote in June, and the structure is to be completed by 2026. Another issue we need to discuss is what the new migration routes look like at the moment and what steps aggressive Russia and Belarus. Arab media began to comment on the detention of Polish soldiers at the border after they fired warning shots at immigrants. Now they will probably be trained on this issue by the regime in Minsk, not to worry about any shelling, because it will certainly not reach them. This situation forced the Polish authorities to change the law, but it also showed the weaknesses of the European system. The model of immigrant transfer has not changed fundamentally from the one in force in 2021 when Russia started sending mass immigrants to Europe. But now it is slightly more sophisticated and well thought out. Until recently, Russians smuggled immigrants through Turkey using fake Southwind airlines. Not so long ago, these planes could even enter EU airspace without any problems. But restrictions were imposed on them in 2024, in April, after reports from the Finns and Poles. On Christmas Eve, Southwind Airlines launched direct flights between Istanbul and Minsk.
Азиатский континент становится новым центром силы. Его политическая, да и экономическая роль растет в геометрической прогрессии.
Europeans and Americans have given Russia control over the Sahel, and this may have a negative impact on Europeans in the coming years, because this region is one of the most unstable in the world, and due to its proximity, refugees can easily be transported from it to Russia or Belarus. Additionally, unstable Libya is another place from which pontoons with refugees sailing through the Mediterranean Sea constantly depart. Coups supported by the Russian Wagner Group took place in Mali in May 2021, then Burkina Faso in September 2021, then Niger in July 2023. More Sahel countries fall victim to military coups, and Putin eagerly takes photos with local leaders. The propaganda tube, including Russia Today, broadcasts anti-European propaganda in these countries. and France is losing influence over the uranium resources it controls in this part of the world. Without them, it may have a serious problem with continuing to maintain the domestic nuclear energy sector, which is the main element driving the French economy.
Pendant 10 ans de régime, le quotidien des Nigériens n'a pas changé. Par conséquent, les Nigériens ont appelé à sortir massivement et de bouter dehors cette politique. Nous sommes également sortis pour dire à ce petit Macron de la France que le Niger nous appartient. C'est à nous de faire ce que nous voulons du Niger, ce que nous voulons, nous traitons avec qui nous voulons.
That the whole belt south of the Sahara is becoming an extremely problematic area.
What is happening in the Sahel region has a direct impact on the migrants standing at the gates of Europe. It is also worth mentioning that 1.5 months ago, the president of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko, publicly told the leadership of the Ministry of Defense, Interior, KGB, and officers that in the near future sabotages will take place on Polish territory, which will be shown under the Belarusian and Russian flags.
Знаете, не хуже меня на ту политику добрососедства, которую мы предложили нашим соседям, полякам, литовцам и латышам, учитывая безвизовое пространство, они отвечают обратным образом. Мы видим и попытку, кроме информационной войны, навязать нам войну диверсионных групп. Мы также это отмечаем в последнее время и ведем борьбу против этого. Мы видим, что они готовят разного рода вооруженные отряды и чуть ли не полки, как они их называют, для того, чтобы осуществить вторжение на территорию Беларуси.
Recently, there has been a scourge of arson in Poland, and an investigation is underway regarding Russian intervention. Tight borders and control of all those who want to cross them are currently the most important element for European security. It goes without saying that not everyone will be caught. The Germans keep this in mind and continue to carry out random checks at the borders with Poland. Recently, immigrants found a migration route to Germany through a Polish beach near the town of Świnoujście. In turn, only in the first 5 months of 2024, over 10,000 people arrived in Great Britain through the English Channel. Illegal immigrants. Statistics from the British Home Office indicate that this is a record time in this respect, and more than in previous years. This is proof that the process of illegal migration is accelerating, and Russia and Belarus are looking for all possible places to pump more people into the EU. Recently, Finland was even forced to close its maritime borders with Russia because migrants were crossing the frozen sea. And even earlier, they had entered from the north on bicycles towards Russia. It sounds a bit comical, but the matter is deadly serious, which is why the growing tension on the Polish border is even more disturbing, especially since immigrants are becoming more and more dangerous, as shown by the death of a Polish soldier, but also videos such as the one from TikTok, where immigrants are starting to have fun, turn into terrorists. TikTok. Poland must protect Europe by building a dam, which is why it is one of the most important structures being built in Europe. The Baltic countries and Finland have started to do the same, because NATO is really afraid of a conflict with Russia. That's all for today's episode. Thank you for your attention, and see you soon. Bye.